Hi, everybody. So glad that you are on this webinar. You have a treat in store, so much information that's going to be shared with us about making a better website or creating one if you don't have one right now. So I'm Dr. Marcia McPhee, and if you don't know, if you're not familiar with me, I'm the creator and visionary of the Worship Design Studio, which is an online website where I do coaching, resourcing, teaching, training your staff and volunteers about everything worship arts. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this webinar today is because we don't yet have in the Worship Design Studio a really good interview with somebody who can tell us how to get people in the doors, how to get them in worship in the first place. We are all about making worship meaningful and memorable, what I call good. But we also have to think about how do we get the word out? Call it publicity, call it evangelism. It doesn't matter. It's just how do we get folks in the door so that we can be about the business of bringing the word, the liberating word, alive. A couple of announcements before we start with Dave. One is that we still have the Lent scripts for Gifts of the Dark Wood available if you have not purchased those. Lent is super early this year, and so what I did is something a little bit different than I've done before, and that is to give you scripts, everything that you need, music, visual ideas, ideas for children's moments, the entire script ready-made for you for Lent. So if you have not started on Lent yet, and my goodness, right around the corner, February 10th is Ash Wednesday, that is still available. Just go to marciamcphee.com, click on blog, and you can find the link in my blog about Gifts of the Dark Wood. Now, the second thing I want to tell you is that my retreat, my May retreat in Lake Tahoe is filling up fast. So you want to be sure to get in on that if that's something that you would love to do. Come to Lake Tahoe, spend 5 days with me here in Lake Tahoe. It's absolutely beautiful. And we spend the time in continuing education, everything about designing worship, training you so that you can go home and train your team or bring your team, and also spiritual renewal time. So that is, you go to marciamcphee.com for that and click on calendar, and the link to that, to register for that, is there. Okay, so we got to get right to it. Dave Baker has become a friend of mine. We have worked on several projects. We met in hot and sticky Florida one summer at a conference, and he began to help me to see how important websites and getting the word out is. And so I wanted him to be able to tell you about that as well. He's going to tell you more about himself, but he trains new pastors in online outreach, and he does that for the Presbytery of Tampa Bay. So without further ado, Dave, it is so great to have you here today. We've got a great crowd here online, and there's going to be some others watching via the recording. But take it away and help us learn how to make great websites.
Sure thing, Marcia. Thanks so much for the good introduction. There's an incredible amount that I would like to share with you. But what are we going to talk about? What are you going to learn? Well, the big thing that I want to get across is how anybody, even someone who doesn't like the computer and doesn't really like the web or things like that, can use best practices on their church website to get more people to visit their church, because that's really the purpose behind the church website. Now, another thing that I really want to mention, in case you didn't see it in the web materials that Marcia sent out, is that if you stick around to the end of the webinar, there'll be an opportunity for at least one church to get a completely custom designed website done for you. So that's free.
Wow.
So stick around. It's a lot of material, but I think that you'll really find some things that you can use and apply immediately to your site, or if you're looking to get a new site, to give you a lot of direction for what you should be looking for. Okay, so that's what we're going to learn. As Marcia mentioned, I am a PCUSA pastor. I am actually, I've been in the ministry for quite a while. I know I look like I'm 12. But I actually am not. I'm pushing 40 and starting to kind of get sensitive. But I have had it beat into me from my education and whatnot that I have to have a 3-point sermon. So I just, even for this, I have 3 points that I have to present. So That's what we're going to learn tonight broadly is, number one, why many church websites are really not that good. Marcia, have you found that in your interaction with churches?
Yeah, it was a few years ago. I had summer interns, and they were consulting with people in the worship design studio, churches in the worship design studio. And the first thing I asked them to do was to go and look at church websites. And they
Mhm.
came back and they said to me, "Well, we haven't learned much about their vision or what their spiritual path is." I mean,
Yeah.
really, there wasn't much to learn. So, yeah, I think that's absolutely true. We could all use some work.
Yeah, whenever I look at Presbyterians are particularly bad at this, and whenever I look at the websites of the churches in my presbytery or nationally, it makes me die a little inside sometimes. We're not paying attention here like we could be, and certainly like some others are. So that's the first thing that we're going to talk about is really diagnosing the problem. Why we have this. Second, we're going to talk about how to fix it. What actually makes a website that gets people to visit on Sunday. And would that be something that you guys are interested in knowing about? Would you like to have a website that encourages people in your community to actually visit? Go ahead and type yes in the chat box there. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of folks. Yeah, that's amen. We have got such a great message that we have to get out to people. How do we do that? We've kind of fallen behind, and we need to know a little bit more about how to get that message out. So we're going to talk about that, how to fix the problem. And the last thing we're going to do is talk about one mistake that can derail all of your other efforts. The one thing that so many churches don't do that they absolutely have to do if their websites are going to effectively reach their community. It makes a lot of sense when you know what this is, and it seems very obvious, but so many pastors don't do this. So many churches don't do this. In fact, I've hardly ever seen a church actually not make this mistake. It's very, very common. Okay, so let's talk a little bit first about the basics. This is just the rudimentary stuff. Do you think it's a good idea for every church to have a good website today? Go ahead and type yes in the box if you think so. Definitely. Absolutely. Barna came up with the same figures. Barna did a survey of senior pastors in 2014, and they asked them this question. Do you agree that small churches are better off not having a website? And 97% of pastors disagreed with that. So only 3% of pastors think that that's that a website is optional. And I think that really those 3% are just crazy. I don't understand what's going on there, because it is, this is how we live our lives today. It's a very, very important part of who we are in the 21st century. So a few statistics on this: 90% of younger people will check out a church online before paying a visit. What do you think about that, Marcia? Does that sound right to you?
Dave, I think actually not just young people. I don't know what the statistics say, but 8 years ago when I started the Worship Design Studio, it was a very simple website. It was just clicked this PDF and open this PDF, click this and open this recording. And I had so many people calling and asking me about tech questions. But in the 8 years since then, the Worship Design Studio website now has so many more things, but people are used to it. I mean, it's just become the way that we do. I Google restaurants and I look at their menu before I go, because I want to know, beforehand. And that's, I think, the same thing with churches.
I have actually Googled a grocery store before visiting. So that's how dependent I am on a website, because it alleviates anxiety, if you've never been to a place. But also, this is oftentimes the first and possibly only impression that someone's going to have of your church. Now, do you think that making a good first impression is important? I do.
You're asking obvious questions.
Yeah, I am. I'm hoping for a yes. I'm hoping for people to tell me what they think.
Right.
But right, I mean, your first impression, it's impossible to undo, and you would never, for instance, let your grounds go unmowed for 4 weeks. but oftentimes we'll let our website go, without an update for 4 weeks.
What a great analogy.
Thanks. But it is so important, but it oftentimes does not really get the attention paid to it that needs to be paid to it. So I do have some good news here. Your website doesn't necessarily have to be the very, very best in order to be effective. It only has to be a little bit better than everybody else's. Okay, and I've noticed this in just about every church that I've been in. One of the first things that we always do is redesign the website. We update the website, and it always works like, for me at least, it has always worked like gangbusters. We track how many people come in. We ask them just like, how did you find out about our church? And right after we redesigned the website at my, I guess, church before last, or right after we did, it was 50% of people were coming because they found us online. And over, after 3 years or so, it stopped being the case. We'd ask people how they found us and a friend, or they drove by, and they weren't coming through the website anymore. It's because we hadn't updated it in 3 years, and all the other churches around us had. And so we were the ones that were being eaten by the bear here at that time, and we just needed to update things. So that's a simple analogy. But before we get into the actual content, I do want to tell you a little bit about who I am and why you should listen to me. Now, Marcia did a good job introducing me. My name is David Baker. I've been a Presbyterian minister for about 14 years, graduated from Princeton in 2002. In that time, I've served as a solo pastor. I've served as a new church development pastor. Currently, I'm serving as a stated clerk of the Presbytery of Tampa Bay, as well as their communications director. If you have no idea what that is, the way I like to explain it to non-Presbyterians is it's like a bishop, but with absolutely no power, like no power whatsoever. And so I help the pastors in our area. But I also help the pastors in our church nationally. Next week, I'm going to be going to Louisville, which is our headquarters, and training the new pastors in our denomination, very much the same way I'm training y'all. So this is something that I've done for a number of years, and it's helped me in my personal experiences with churches as well. I've had a lot of instances where I've helped churches grow, and the website is always a big piece of it. It's only a piece of it, but it really helps to be able to get people in the door. So that's a little bit about me professionally. I'll come back to that in a minute, but I do want to tell you about me personally. I'm also a new father. I've been very busy because I have an 8-month-old daughter named Esther, who is by far the cutest thing. At least I think when other people say that they have the cutest baby, I'm like, they're wrong. It's just, sorry, my baby wins. So I am a proud father, and I've also been very busy as the stated clerk. However, before, maybe I've only been in this role for about 6 months. And before that, I was at a small city church. It's a little downtown church called Woodlawn Presbyterian Church. Now, when I got to Woodlawn Presbyterian Church, they were really struggling. In fact, I was a little bit annoyed at the person who brought me in. We had someone, kind of the person who had the leadership position in the Presbytery before me brought me in, and they had about 35 people a week on Sundays. And they were disheartened and just wasn't going well. So one of the first things that we did was, of course, redo the website, and we implemented a lot of the things in worship that Marcia recommends in Worship Design Studio, and did a lot of things like that, and brought them back to health. We'd have about 60 a week in worship, something like that, by the time that I left, and a lot of it did have to do with getting a good enough website. A lot of people told me that was, well, how did you find us? Oh, well, I found the website. So this kind of thing does work. It's something that you can implement in your own church, and that will help you bring guests in. Now, I learned this stuff actually in the professional world. I've started 2 successful web companies. I've got a staff working for me that does this kind of thing. And after a while, I felt like, man, I've got to get this information out to churches. I felt very strongly about that. I really feel like the Lord was leading me in that way. I went through Credo. I don't know if anyone has been through that, but we do that in a couple of denominations. And it was wonderful, and it really led me to where I am today with what I'm about to share with you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. So let's talk a little bit about what the problem is with church websites. What's the problem? Now I'm going to ask you guys a bold question, and we're not going to judge, but does anybody here have a church website that stinks? Anybody here willing to fess up? Yeah.
So-so,
It's
mediocre.
mediocre.
Okay.
Yeah. It can always be better. And a very firm yes. That's good. Own that. That's right. I think that's
we have confession going on.
step.
Betsy confesses.
All right.
Okay.
All right. We're at church here. Okay. But yeah, this is a problem. I mean, it really is a problem. And why is it a problem? I think the real heart of it is that we don't prioritize this. It's not a priority. Our priorities are kind of out of place. Now, what do I mean by that? They fail to reach the community because they're designed by novices. A lot of the time, that's what happens. A lot of my friends and people that I know end up designing their own church websites. Now, I want to ask you guys another question. How was your web design class in seminary?
That's a trick question.
If it was like mine, it was non-existent. Okay, it was bad. We just not covered. You don't learn
right?
this. This isn't something that you're taught. But yet, often the pastor is the one who sees the need and can't find anybody else to do it, so they take it upon themselves. And you kind of get mediocre results. Or you have a really passionate volunteer, and they take it over and they do it. Now, I actually had a friend whose 14-year-old niece designed his church website. And you know what? I saw it, and it looked very much like it had been designed by a 14-year-old girl. And you could kind of tell there's a gap. There's a gap there, but we're not prioritizing it because we want to do things kind of on the cheap, or really we're looking at different priorities. The second thing is it's updated by nobody. Even if you spend $2,000 or $3,000 to have somebody come in and design a website for you, which most of the websites that I've designed have cost that much, like when I was in ministry. And then the designer leaves. And if you need something done, who's going to do it? Oftentimes, there's not the skill there to actually update it, or it's given to a volunteer who has other priorities, or it's given to the pastor. Who here has ever had to update their website and been frustrated? I have, and I'm very comfortable with this. Yeah, I hate that. Oh my goodness. And there are other things that you should be doing with your time. And God bless you for doing it, because it does need to get done. But that's why it fails, because if I have a funeral or if I need to spend more time on the sermon, guess what's going off my plate?
Right.
This. So, but the real crux of the matter is that the design and the strategy and everything behind the church website is that it is done with the church members in mind, not with the community. The purpose of your church website is not to keep the members happy. It's not to keep the finance committee happy or anything like that. It's to reach your community. It's your public face. It's the thing that people first see, or it's one of the things that people first see about your church. Now, that makes it extremely important. Now, the thing that you really are doing with your church website is reducing anxiety for guests. You're trying to help them, get them enough information to make a decision about whether or not you would be a good fit, a good place for them to worship the Lord, a good place for them to make friends, etc., etc. Now, I had I let the cat out of the bag. I'm a Presbyterian minister, and as such, I haven't been to a real bar in many years. And not too long ago, I had a good friend who was very rough around the edges, extremely rough around the edges, recovering addict, things like that. And he invited me out to a bar, and so we go to this dive bar in my neighborhood, and I'm wearing basically what I'm wearing now. And poor Presbyterian minister me, I had no idea what was going on. I was so nervous. And we walk in there and nobody's dressed like I'm dressed. Everybody is wearing a black shirt and jeans. And I'm like, no one told me I was supposed to wear a black shirt and jeans. I didn't know. And I couldn't get I couldn't even order a drink. I didn't know how to get the bartenders, if that's even the right term, I wouldn't even know, attention. So we never did get to play pool, which is what we went there for. But anyway, it was kind of a stressful experience for me. And as I was walking into the place, I realized I had an epiphany, and I thought, this is exactly how anyone in this bar would feel going into my church.
Mm. Right.
The anxiety and the difficulty behind that, and how can we alleviate that? How can we? Because it's a brave thing to go somewhere that you've never been before, to people that you don't know. You might not know anybody. It takes a certain personality, and there are 100 excuses that are going to come up. So the purpose of the website really is to reduce that anxiety, but it's also the cornerstone of your outreach efforts. So what do I mean by that? Every piece of paper, every bulletin, every card, every ad in the newspaper, whatever it is that you're doing for outreach is going to have your church website on it. The side of your van probably has your church website on it. It's everywhere. It's probably on the sign outside of your church. So because it's part of really the heart of all of your efforts, people, when they're thinking about visiting your church, are going to visit your website. Even if a friend invites them, they're probably going to go to your church website. So because of that, it does need to be a priority. So I think we all agree that having a good church website is a priority, I think. So how do you actually do that? How do you structure your site so that people will visit your church? Now, the way that I think that you need to think about this is having a guest-centered website. Your site needs to be centered around the needs of the guest. That's really what you're looking to do. So you have to, it's just like preaching. You can't give a good, effective message unless you know who you're speaking to. You have to exegete the audience. That's what they taught us in seminary. You have to think about the person you're speaking to. So who is it that you're speaking to when you're communicating in this new medium online with the website? So you're speaking to a guest. Now, what does that guest want to know? What's really going through their heart and their head? They are most likely looking for, when does your church service happen? Let's take a look at this particular site. This is the site that I like a lot of the information on their site, although the design I'm not as crazy about. When does their church service take place? 10:50. It's very upfront. Now let's look at this site. When does their church service take place? I couldn't tell you. It's 2 or 3 pages back. It takes some time to kind of find that, and that's a problem I myself had very recently. I was trying to get to a church in our area, and I couldn't find the time that the church service started, and because of that, I missed church. I ended up going somewhere else because I didn't know, does the service start at 9 or 10 or 11? By the time I found it, it was too late. So that's one thing that guests need to know. It's just very practical. Keep in mind the people who are on your website that you most want to get information to are those who are planning a visit to your church. So you need to make that process frustration-free as possible. So directions. Nowadays, we all use our smartphones, but it is good to have directions on the website, at least an address that's very upfront and easy to find. For instance, on this site, it's right there at the bottom of the site, but it's on the front page. It's very easy to find. On this site, I don't think I ever found where this church was, and sometimes that happens. It's something that's easy to overlook. I've even had pastors say to me, there's no need to put the address on the church website. Everybody knows where we are. And no, they don't. Not every single person in your community knows everything that your church people do about your site. So it's very important to include that basic information in an area and in a place that's easy for first-time guests to find, because if you don't find information quickly, that's not good. The next thing that guests want to know gets back to that reduction of anxiety that I talked about earlier. You've really got to have something on your website that's just for guests, just for people who are new. Now, oftentimes that will be called like I'm new or new here or first time or something like that. And it's just about any successful church, you're going to see this on their website. And it's essentially a page that's just for somebody who's new that explains something about your culture, what's expected dress and what's not, maybe the typical service and where do I drop my kids off, what's going on with the nursery, links to the nursery page, something like that, as well as, again, just the kind of information that you might need. Now, this is one of our template sites, but you can see it's very prominent. It's something that you really want to spend time in and time doing to make sure that they don't have any excuses not to come and that their anxiety levels are reduced as far as possible. The next thing that you really need to have as well is information about the pastor. Now, info about the pastor, the very best way to do this is to have a video of the pastor on the New Here page, something like that, or even on the front page of the website. Just a video welcoming guests and saying a little bit about themselves or about the church. That's absolutely a best practice. If you can't do that, or if you don't want to do that, then the next best thing is to at least have something on your site. And this is another template site, and forgive the tongue-in-cheek language there. I'm playing around with it, but this is the least that you can do. At least have a staff page. Another thing that you can do is have sermons on the site. Something that allows people to get to know the pastor.
Hey, Dave, the idea about doing a video. I know some people are a little shy about doing a video, or that sounds really complicated. But I want to tell you that is very actually simple these days, right? Most computers come with a camera. Most of you have the ability to have the video on right now if you wanted to. And most computers come with some ability to record yourself, not to mention just recording on your phone these days, right?
Yep.
So it's really simple. And the way I do a really short, concise thing, which is what we want to do, right? We don't want to do a long thing. We want it to be, a minute maybe? Is that a good time?
Too.
Yeah. And I will write myself a script and I'll practice it, right? So you don't want to read it like it's a script, but it's really important that you sort of think about what you want to say. What are those main points you want people to know about you? And then just make yourself a little video. It's really pretty simple to do these days.
It's really simple, especially if you've got a great smartphone.
Right.
And I do things like that all the time. Another great idea is just grab people in your church service after the church service or before and have them speak for 45 seconds off the cuff about what they like about the church. Yeah, and put those on the New Here page too.
That's great.
It's really easy to do. And it's that authentic piece that a lot of folks are looking for when they're trying to make a decision about where am I going to fit in here? Am I going to find friends here? Is this church for me, more or less? Now, the Presbyterian denomination, we do have there are a lot of things that we do right, and one of the things that we do right is research. We love to research. We love to study. Yeah, we
Let's
really
put a committee together.
And committees. So I'm not even going to get started on committees.
Okay.
But we have an entire department dedicated to research. It's called Research Services. And a few years back, they put together a study of new members in the denomination. They asked all the new members how they joined and what helped them stay. So the thing that really was most effective for them was the friendliness of the congregation. That was the number one reason that people gave for sticking around. Did they make friends? Can they make friends? The number two is actually the pastor. That was kind of a statistical dead heat split between the pastor, relationship with the pastor, connection with the pastor, and making friends. But making friends is so important because that's what a lot of people are looking for. They're looking for a social network. And can they find that at your church? Now, I actually had one couple decide to join our church from 2,000 miles away. And it was because we had so many events listed on our church calendar. They saw all those and felt like this is an active church. They're Reformed. And we can, we feel like we're going to we're going to be able to fit in here because we had that, that information. So you want to have things like if you have small groups, you want to include information about small groups. If you have ministries or committees that people can join, you want to have that. You want to have a calendar with all the events of the church. And it's very, very important to keep that up to date. If you have it, it's very important to keep that up to date. Now, Marcia and I have seen this slide before, and she had some, I thought, good advice, some sage advice and wisdom.
Well, I often go to websites and I can tell they've used stock photos, right? And I just look at the people in those photos and I go, those people do not go to that church. Because a stock photo has
they're
like
way too good looking,
right? Exactly. They're too perfect, and that's what I noticed about this, the one at the top anyway. And of course, you can tell the smaller ones, those are like real people at the real church. So I just wanted to, it's so easy to take photos these days, good photos actually, right from your phone. And so let's say you see this stock photo and you like that these are a couple of people, they're looking at the Bible. It's something that you want to project on your website. So why not take a couple of people and even just stage that same sort of posture and take a picture of that, use that. One of the best reasons to do it is because then you don't have to pay for a stock photo, right? And you have your people, and it's could be a really easy way to make it really much more authentic. That's just something I noticed when I looked at this photo.
And and we buy stock photos when churches don't want to do that, and we'll put them up there. But I do want you to notice below the stock photo, there are other photos that are the authentic. You can tell these are not actors. This is the real church, and I think that's really important to have as well, because people are there. Our detectors for ads are pretty high nowadays, and the more authentic and real your site is, the better information you're going to have. So I do think that's a really important thing to note as well, but it's kind of an aside. So the last thing that I'm going to mention, this isn't exhaustive, but this is another thing that some guests in some churches really want to know about, and that's kids. If you have a good kids ministry, you really want that to be part of your website. I mean, everything that you can have about how the kids are going to be treated. If you have a protection policy, absolutely. Put at least the bare bones basics about that. Like there's never less than 2 people in a room alone with a kid. No one is ever alone with the kids. Everyone gets background checked, whatever. As well as what you're going to teach them, because a lot of people are really concerned. They want help with training their children up in the faith. So whatever it is you're going to present to them during children's church or whatever, and just that they're going to have a good time and they're going to be happy. So make sure that you have as much information as possible about your, everything to do with kids, because that's a tremendous source of anxiety, as I have just discovered 8 months ago.
Right, exactly. And, somebody just brought something up in the chat box that's really important, and that is, this is a picture. Let's say you take this picture of your youth group and you put it on there. You want to be sure that you have approval to put that picture up on the website, right? So that everybody is, everybody knows that their kid's picture is going to be on there or that kind of thing. So that's a really good point to make there.
With kids, it's important. With adults, legally, if it's in a public setting, you're okay. Like if it's outside or something like that, you're okay. But socially, you don't want to ever put somebody's picture on there who's a member of the church that doesn't want it on there. Right. I mean, that's just. I hope that's common sense.
Exactly.
But thank you for pointing that out.
And just before you go on, Dave, you're talking about guest-centered websites, right? Rather than just member-centered websites. It's a great point. One of the things that I have been saying to Worship Design Studio members for years is that websites have to be as inspirational as they are informational. And so when,
Yes.
I teach in the worship design studio to design in series, worship series, which of course everybody who's in the
Mhm.
worship design studio knows that that's not antithetical to lectionary preaching, but that it creates a communal spiritual journey over a few weeks, right?
Absolutely.
And one of
Mhm.
the reasons we want to plan ahead, which we teach in the worship design studio,
Yep.
is so that we can get the word out about what's coming up. We can, it's a great way to get visitors to come in. It's an on-ramp for visitors. Oh, there's a series
Yes.
that sounds really relevant to my life. Maybe I'll go check that out.
Yep.
Looks like it's starting next week. Okay, where are they? What time is it? Et cetera, et cetera. So what are your thoughts about that, Dave?
I have been doing exactly that for at least the last 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that. Usually, my series lasts between 4 and 6 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a graphic done every 4 to 6 weeks and put it right up front and
Right,
center
right.
on the slider in the website. I find it essential. I think you absolutely should be doing that. And I've preached in series for years as well, and I really do prefer that method. But if you're preaching in series, especially, I think it's so important to have that on the website because you've got to help them plan their visit. They want to know what's going on that week.
Yeah.
That week.
Yeah,
That's
and
the important thing.
the truth is that people are really shopping around for churches, not by denomination necessarily anymore as
Right.
much, um, and even not by neighborhood as much. They'll drive 20 or
Hmm.
30 minutes to a
Right.
really good worship service that is doing, a community that's on a spiritual journey that feels really
Hmm.
meaningful and worthwhile. So I think that's so important that we let people know not just where, when, what, why, how, but where are we going on this spiritual journey?
Amen.
Yeah.
And this is a new way of communicating, and it's visual. It's
Yeah.
very visual,
That's right.
and we've really got to kind of get on board
Right.
with that.
Right.
And this leads right into the next thing.
Great.
Beyond the guest-centeredness, there's a few technical pieces that you need to nail as well, and this has to do with guests and making a good impression, but this is more related to the website. So one of the things that you absolutely have got to have, and write this down, please do not get any kind of website that is not responsive. Now, what does responsive mean? Responsive, very simply, means that it changes what's displayed based on the device. So if you access it with your phone, it's going to look good. Have you ever tried to go to a website that just looked exactly the same on your phone as it does on your desktop? And it's got these tiny little links that you have to, just squeeze in. That's unfortunate, and a lot of church websites are not designed in a responsive way to actually take advantage of that. And that's a huge problem because over 50% of search traffic through Google now is on phones.
Yeah.
So actually, more people are accessing your website on the phone than are on the desktop. And if your website is not designed responsively, then you've automatically alienated 50% of potential guests. Not to mention that Google will penalize you in the search engine results if your website is not designed to look good on phones and tablets and things like that. So you've
Wow.
got to, I would go so far as to say that's maybe the most important thing technically that you need to have done. So if your website has not been updated in 2 to 3 years, you really need to get on top of that and have it made responsive. Now, the second thing is modern design. And this is kind of a first impressions thing. This is one of my client websites, but I want you to note, how this website looks, and let's look at a different one. This website, you can kind of tell that the second website there is older. I mean, you can just tell that looks 5 or 10 years older than the other one here. And what are the actual differences? Well, I want you to notice that there's right in the center. There's a big graphic slide, and that is really standard for modern websites, church websites especially. It's not on every single website, but I really highly recommend that you do that, as well that you keep that updated, that you put new events there, that you put sermon series there, that your website is a living thing and it needs to be updated and have new information on it. So take advantage of that. That's a new way of communicating, and it's a good way to promote things. The other thing that I really want you to notice is there aren't any small text links. Okay, there's no text links. On this site, you can see there's these little text links like Facebook or sermons, and if you're on your phone, those are going to be impossible to click. If you're on your tablet, it's going to be really hard to click. All the links on a well-designed modern site are going to be big buttons, like big graphic links, like times and locations, small groups, ministry teams. Those are buttons. You click there. They're really easy to hit if you're on your iPad or something like that.
So even though it says click here in the little banner in one of those middle things, if you click anywhere on that big button on that, then it will go. So that's what you're talking about. It's just a larger space. It makes it much more friendly on a tablet or a phone.
Yep, and it's from a technical standpoint, it's basically just linking images rather than text. And that's, if you're technical, maybe that makes sense. But so the next thing that you need is content that matches vision. Okay. So what we've got here is a website. I'm sorry to pick on you again, Calvary Episcopal, but what's your first impression from this particular site? My first impression is they have a very pretty church. That's a nice building, but it doesn't necessarily make me want to go there. Yeah, big building. I'd hate to do the upkeep, right? So the church here. What's your first impression of them? Who are they? And which of these churches would you be more likely to visit? See, the first church, all I really got from that is it's pretty, it's historic. This church, they want to do something for the city. They want to do something for the world. And that is more motivational to me personally. But whatever your church is about, it doesn't matter. It just needs to be about helping them get to know who you are. And
at a glance, really, right? At first glance, yeah.
Because people make, you make a snap judgment. You make your decision before you think about it, and your snap judgment is usually going to be what your thought process leads you to. So at a glance, you get this idea like, oh gosh, I know exactly what they're about, and I'm on board. That sounds exciting. Yeah. So you need to, and this is right exactly what you were saying earlier, Marcia, about your website being inspirational and not just informational. You do need to have the information, but it has to be inspirational too, at least in the sense of sharing who you are and what's really important to your church.
Speaking of that big building, I've always said that what drives me crazy about bulletins, or what I call worship guides, that have the building, the same graphic on the front of the bulletin week after week, and it's a picture of the church building or a drawing of the church building. We just came in. We don't need to know what it looks like.
We found the place already.
So, what is the best graphic use of in some ways, your pages are like real estate, right? You want to make the best use of that real estate and have your best foot forward, your most inspirational kinds of things that draw people into your ministry. Somebody had a question about sliders. You were talking about sliders, and they weren't sure what you were meaning. So that banner across the top third, and a slider is something that moves across, right? It's like you can have 3 or 4 or 5. It's like a slideshow, and it's moving across. You've probably been to websites like that, but I just wanted to clear that up. We had that question in the chat box. All right, go ahead.
Thanks, Marcia. Okay, and we will have a Q&A at the end too. All right, so the last area that you really need to nail, kind of on the website side of things, is up-to-date information. Now, really what I'm saying here is no out-of-date information. Take a look at this site. Now, I mentioned earlier, I like the information on the site. I like the information. I really like that they have an event that's coming up on their slider. However, this VBS that's happening in June, I took this picture in August. And so what does it say to a potential guest when they go to your church website and they find information that's months out of date? I couldn't tell you the number of times I've been to a church website and they have the Easter schedule up and it's July or even January, or the Easter schedule is from a year ago. And it says to the person visiting that they're not cared for, that their needs are not being taken into consideration, and it's unprofessional, and really it just doesn't do anybody any good. I've got one friend who says he's got a 75-year-old friend for whom this is a pet peeve, and she just will not visit a church if there are things like that out of date on the website, because
it
she
says
feels like
we're not paying attention, right? And we're not guest centered, because this is our
right.
the public face, right? So yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, we don't care about your experience. We care about our our members. So it's very important to not have out of date content on your site. Now there are two ways to kind of skin that potato. And one way is don't have any information that ever needs updating on your site. Just if it needs updating, take it out. If you're not going to be able to update it, then create a site that's static. I don't recommend that. I don't think that is best practice, but it's far better than having something out of date. So if you can't keep it up to date, then just don't put anything on there that needs updating. I think the very best thing to do is really to keep as much up to date on your website as possible, particularly for that week. So if you're in the middle of a sermon series, have the sermons from the previous weeks up there so people can catch up. Have a bulletin, have a church calendar, have the church newsletter, or just especially events going on, things like that, sermon series. So up to date information, very important.
Dave, I just had an idea, just quickly.
Sure.
There are some websites where you can embed like a Facebook feed. So if you have a church, and many churches have a Facebook page now, and if you have active people who are really active on that Facebook page, wouldn't it be a really great idea to have that embedded in your website so that it is, that's real time. It's getting updated in real time. And so that might be a way of really looking fresh or being fresh, and also a way of connecting. If I'm going to go to this church, maybe I'll go on the website, on the Facebook page and say, hey, I think I'm going to visit your church on Sunday. And somebody might say, hey, awesome, I'll meet you there, something like that.
Yep. Yeah, no, I've done that for clients in the past, and I've had that kind of interaction on Facebook too. I think it's a great idea. Okay, so what is the number one mistake that churches make with their websites? This is something that, again, like I said, is obvious in retrospect, but most churches don't really think about it. Okay, so I want to ask you guys another question, and this is a way of thinking about this mistake. Do you think that purchasing advertising on that billboard would be a mistake? Go ahead and tell me in the chat box. This is a billboard in the middle of a field. What would you think of somebody who actually chose to advertise there? Yes, definitely a mistake to do that. And I would actually say you're probably only an idiot would do that, right? You're in the middle of the field, no one sees it, and you kind of would be wasting money at that point. However, we fail to do that with our church websites. What you've got to understand is that until people see your site, no matter how well it's designed, no matter how guest-centered it is, it doesn't matter. People have got to see your site, or it's useless. Your church is like a bulletin board. It's like a billboard on the internet, on the information superhighway. Okay, and people going by it, we even call it traffic. That's what you have to have. If you want to have new people at your church from your website, you have to have new people on your website to see the website and make a decision about coming to your church. So how do you do that? That's what we're going to talk about. How do you promote your church? There are several ways to do it. I'm running a little low on time, so I'm going to go through these more quickly than I had planned, but this is very important. One of the primary ways to do it is by purchasing advertising, either on Google or Facebook. Now, I'm sure that you've searched for churches, or you've searched for your own church, or you've searched for anything online, and what you see is ads on the right-hand side of Google. This is called AdWords. A lot of churches will advertise in this way. However, it can be extremely expensive. I used to do this for our church, and at one point it was $4 per click. Just to get traffic. So not per guest coming to my church, just for someone to go to the website. So it's extremely expensive, but it can be effective. And if no one else is doing it in your area, it can be cheap and it can be really a good idea. But it really it's very highly dependent on where you are, but you should probably explore that. Social media, if you happen to have a lot of people in your church who are active on social media, who have a lot of friends who are local, this is a great thing to do. You can have them check in every Sunday, give them some kind of point system or something, or some kind of reward, or just put it in the bulletin. Remember to check in on Facebook, or you can or social media, or you can post things and ask them to share. Post things on your own Facebook page and ask them to share. But you're probably not going to get very far just posting things yourself on your own fan page, unless your church is sharing them and interacting with them and things like that. So if you already have a lot of people that are into social media, that's a great way to promote your website. The best way, in my opinion, to promote your website online, and there are a lot of offline things you can do too, the best way to do promotion for your website is local SEO. Now, what do I mean by that? Local SEO, or search engine optimization, basically is a way to get your website onto the first page of Google. Now, unfortunately, the way that websites work nowadays, that's very, very important. The last time, I'm not sure I could tell you the last time that I went to the second page of Google when I was looking for something. And generally speaking, people who are not really sure where they want to go, they're just going to type in like Presbyterian Church or Methodist Church or good churches in Tampa or something like that. They're going to type something like that in, and then they're going to look at the first 10, maybe 5 results, and that's going to be that. And that really is the way that most people interact. 70% of web traffic goes to the search engine results from Google. The stuff that appears on the side, the ads, only 30% of folks go to that, and it's expensive. So if you can get into the natural search results, that's absolutely what you want to do. And the power of this, if you manage to get on the first page and in the first ranking, like the very top ranking, is extraordinary. I want to show you one of my client sites that I do SEO work for. This is a site that we took over in January, and they weren't on Google at all, really, when we took over. We started from scratch, and it takes a while to build up trust with Google. And eventually we got, you can see here around September, we hit the top position in Google. So we were #1 in Google in September, and you can see these are their actual traffic results. You can see the number of unique visitors that were coming, went in August from 364 to 620 in September. So almost doubling the amount of people that are going to this church website. Now, this particular church, the year before they got their website, they had added no new members. They were very small. They weren't doing well. This past year, they've added 9 members. And some of that, you can't add members if you don't have new people coming. A website will not automatically get new members in your church, but it can help people find your church and at least visit. And so you have to have some plan, some way to get new people onto your website. And this, in my opinion, is the most solid way, because it's the natural way that people interact with the web. Like the yellow pages don't work anymore. No one uses the yellow pages. Back in the day, you would open up the yellow pages. There would be 15 other churches there, and you'd kind of pick one, maybe the one that started with A, Ascension or something. And today, unfortunately, it's a zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum game. There's only 10 spaces in that top area, and most people are just going to look in those 10 spaces. So you need to have some kind of plan to get people onto your website. How do you do local SEO? Again, this is fairly straightforward, but it's also extremely hard to do correctly and extremely hard to do well. But the way Google looks at it is essentially by the quality and the number of links. Some easy things that you can implement this week: you can go out and claim your Google Places site. You can start a Facebook fan page. You can start a YouTube channel and link all of those back to your church website. You can get online reviews from new members. Like if you've ever thought about which restaurant to go to, you probably look at the reviews. Well, people do that with churches too. So new members know why they joined the church. They know why they liked it. Just ask them to go online and leave a review on Yelp or Google Maps or something like that. And if you have WordPress, use the Yoast SEO plugin. That's all I have time to say about that. So in summary, what you need in order to get people from your website to your church is guest-centered content. You have to think about not the needs of the members, but about the needs of the people who are thinking about coming to your church. You need to have a modern, responsive design so that they can actually interact with the website on their new devices, modern devices. And you need some plan, some way to actually get new people to see your site.
That's great, Dave. What great advice from the design to getting people to see it. Now, we have a few questions, but before we get to those, I know that you are actually helping many churches. And I want to make sure you mentioned something very enticing at the beginning about actually designing, giving one of the people who are here, one of the churches, giving them a design. So I want to hear more about that before we close. And we have just a few questions and we're going to get to that.
Sure thing. Absolutely. And just to sum up about the real urgent need to promote your site, if you build it, they will come, was not actually a quotation from the Bible. It came from the movie Field of Dreams. So just wanted to clear that up.
Right.
So that's where we are, and thank you for introducing that. And I did want to get into this. There, in my opinion, like most things in life, there's an easy way to do things and a hard way to do things. Now, I hope it's been my intention tonight to give you actionable things that you can take home and immediately go tweak your own website, or possibly even just tear it down and build it from the ground up. I want you to have that information and to be equipped to reach your community. However, there is an easier way to do things. And that easy way essentially is to have someone else do it. That's always, I think, to me, a real trick in ministry is don't try to do everything yourself. Get as much help as you can. And the question would be, if you could take 100% of your website's update and maintenance off of your plate or your staff's plate, would you do it? Yes, I would hope so. And this, all updates, all maintenance, that kind of thing. Pastors have got other stuff that they need done. And also, if a volunteer is doing it, you want to make sure that things are done right, done by a professional. And you want to have a working solution for promotion, for advertising your site. Also, you want to have guest-centered content. You want to make sure that these best practices are being put in use, and that there's somebody helping you to guide you through that process of actually making sure that the guest's needs are taken care of, so that you can focus on ministry. Now, I think that you really need to have help, or at least it's very somebody has to help you, a volunteer or another staff member, or my company. Now, without help, you or your staff are on the hook when something breaks. Has anybody here ever had that problem? You're working on the website and something doesn't go quite right, and you lose 5 hours of work, or it takes you 5 hours to figure out, right. It gets bottlenecked and you can't fix it, so it sits there for 2 months or 2 years. So you're on the hook when you run into a roadblock if you don't have help. Site maintenance and making graphics take a ton of time. Now, it depends on your personality. For me, site maintenance is easy. I know how to do all that stuff, but making graphics is just, I don't like it. I'm not, my brain doesn't work that way. And it takes time, depending on your personality. And even if you're able to do it very quickly and it only takes you 20 minutes a week or 30 minutes a week or an hour a week, that's still time that I think is better served preparing for the sermon, or being in pastoral counseling or something like that. That
designing
is
worship.
More, or exactly, designing worship. And also, if you don't have help, I mean, this is just a fact of life, and I've been there too. This is absolutely something that has been in my life. Updates, if they're up to you, sometimes they don't happen. And if there's a funeral or something like that, sometimes that takes priority, as it should.
Yeah.
But you need to have that. You need to have that, something in place to make sure that that happens, to present your very best face to the community, the very best impression that you can. Now, if you have help, you can be assured that you're always going to have that good impression with things up to date, with things guest-centered. You're always going to have somebody to help you with the technical parts of the website, assurance that you're not going to be hacked. I could tell you horror stories about hacking that have happened to people that I know and to myself, and crashes, losing data. And you still get, when you have help, you still get control of your website. You still can do whatever you want with it. So just imagine what your church, your ministry could do with an on-call graphic designer, somebody that could help you with communications within your church or in your church newsletter, as well as on the website. What if you could delegate the whole website, even if your staff isn't tech savvy? Because I've tried to delegate this stuff before to my staff. When I was in that church with 35 people, the church secretary, she had trouble with email, and she just could not do that. That was not in her skill set. But I still needed to delegate it. So this is a way that you can do that, even if you don't have the talent within your church. And what if, and this is by far the most important, what if people in your community were able to find your church through the website? That's really what it's all about. What if you had a reliable way to see that happen? Now, the good news is that I do have a solution for you that I think is easy. Now, I don't know about y'all, but usually what the way most church website deals work is you pay somebody, and it might be $1,000, it might be $2,000. I've paid as much as $3,500 for a quality website that's custom designed. And usually what happens is you do that, and then the developer's gone. They finish the site, they hand you the keys, and if you are not sure what you're doing, you're going to scratch the car up, so to speak. So they're gone, and there's no more support. Now, what happens if you don't pay somebody to do it? Usually, is that a volunteer does it, and in that case, the quality is maybe not exactly where you want it to be. So what I'm going to offer for 15 churches, this is going to fill up. So just 15 churches, because honestly, that's how many I can handle. 15 churches. I'm going to take away the thought that a church is going to have to spend a ton of money up front to get a website designed and get a good website that can reach their community done by waiving my setup fee. I usually charge to other clients, to people who don't know Marcia. So you're very lucky. You're very lucky that Marcia and I are friends. I'm going to waive my normal setup fee, which is $900, which is fairly reasonable for what I am offering. And you're going to get a free guest-centered website with unlimited web services. That means we don't disappear. We're there for you and can create new pages, new aspects to your website anytime you need them. Your imagination is pretty much the limit. We know how to do all of this stuff. We're experts, and we'll do it for you, including updates, things along those lines. Unlimited graphic design, within reason, of course. We only have so many designers, but we'll do the graphic design for you when you need it, and it's guaranteed to look good, guaranteed for you to be happy with it. And the most important thing is we have an advertising solution. We have an outreach solution, and that's search engine optimization. We know how to help your church get onto the front page of Google. And that is actually something that's very complicated to do. And that's something that I specialize in with churches. You're not going to find this with pretty much anybody else. This is not something that you'll see with most other packages at all. So that's something that I do know how to do and that we do offer. So only for the first 15 churches.
So what do they do, Dave? The people are going, yeah.
If
What do they do? Here it is.
Okay,
Ready, set,
here it
go.
is. Now again, this is only for the first 15 churches, but if you are at all interested in reaching your community this year with your website, if you are at all interested in updating your website, if it's been a couple of years, something like that, I strongly encourage you to right now go to this link, growingchurchesonline.com/Marsha. Go there, check out that offer. And I want to also let you know about something that's very, very special. Now, the 15 churches, what they're going to get is unlimited graphic design. They're going to get updates. They're going to get people, my staff, working with them to make sure that their sites are good, and people who are around to help them anytime they need help, to do things for them on the website, and SEO. So they're going to get that with a guest-centered website that is going to be customized for your church. That is a template. We've got maybe 10 or 12 templates that you can choose from. But for the first 3 churches, and for only the first 3 churches, we've got something extremely special that in some ways, I'm kind of on the fence about doing this, because I'm going to take a little bit of a bath on this. But for the first 3 churches, and the first 3 churches only, I'm going to actually design a 100% custom website for your church. Now, the way that our templates work is we only allow 1 template per community. So your site is going to be guaranteed to be unique for your area, and you have a lot of variety that you can pick from. But for the first 3, we will design anything. Just find websites that you like as examples, and we will work on it until you're happy. Now, like I said, that is as expensive as it sounds, and I usually charge $2,000 for that. But because of my friendship with Marsha, and because, to be honest, I'm probably going to use these websites from these 3 churches as new templates eventually for others, I am going to offer that for the first 3.
That's so great, Dave. I'll bet there's 3 already signed up right now.
I'll have to check. There might be, in fact, but that my heart really is to help churches.
Yeah.
I really, it's very, when you know how to do something and you know how to do it well, and you see it's not happening in an organization that you love, you want to help, and so I do want to help. Now, there is also, if you're worried about getting approval from someone, there is, but you want to get in. I do have an ironclad 30-day guarantee. There are no contracts. This is strictly, anytime you want to cancel, you can cancel, and if it's within the first 30 days, of course, it's okay. I'll give you your investment back. So, ironclad 30 days, no hassle, no worry. And I also want to encourage you to consider this, because it's outreach. This is the way to bring new people to your church. It's a way to bring new people into contact with the amazing grace of the gospel. But it's also good stewardship. Getting new members into your church is going, if you are training them to give, gaining even 1 or 2 members a year can completely pay for your online presence. So it's good stewardship in addition to fulfilling your mission as a church.
That's great, Dave. So I encourage you to go check that out. Check out, just try it out. Even if you're not exactly sure, try it out. This is really, we talk about how we prioritize and invest in our churches. And we might spend a lot of money on vacation Bible school materials, on Bible study materials, that kind of thing. But when you get real help doing some very concrete things, it frees you up to really give more of your energy to the things that are important. And that's what we say in the Worship Design Studio as well. Yeah. I get to be on your team. Dave gets to be on your team. So really think about the investment is not just about you're getting people on your team. You're getting experts on your team. And, it's really helped me so much, as you can imagine, steering the worship design studio and designing all of the worship that we upload every season, and all the educational materials that we're continually adding. It's a lot. It's more than a full-time job.
Yeah.
And there are things that I just don't have time to become an expert at, right? That's the biggest deal. And that's why Dave helps me. I don't have the time to become an expert at that. I need to be fulfilling what, God has given me the talent to do, and that is design worship. So at any rate, I'm so glad. Thank you so much, Dave, for your offer, for the great content. Now we're going to get to some questions here, because we've got a lot of questions. Pamela was saying, we'll go back to the earliest question. Pamela was saying
Okay.
that she was told when she puts a map on the website that everyone has GPS on their phone, so it's kind of redundant.
Right.
So would you actually just put a link, map it, and then let that link open up the GPS? What would you do?
On our sites, that's kind of what it does. We have an interactive map, but it's small, and when you click on it, the directions pop up, like how to find our church.
Yeah.
Some people do still like to print directions and take them, but you're absolutely right. People use their smartphones, but that doesn't change the fact that they need to know what to put into their smartphone, and they need to know, is this the right church that's popping up? So,
well, what I'm saying is, if there's a link that you actually link to the Google Map page, so it will actually pop up.
That's fine, but again, you want to have that big graphic to click on.
Sure.
Because if you've got a little tiny text link and it's not responsive, then on their phone, which is presumably where they are, it might be frustrating or hard to see or hard to find.
So really, the graphic of the map is the big button that's helping you just hit it.
Yeah.
And gotcha. Wonderful. Okay.
But you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. People use their smartphones to find places.
Great. Yeah. So Stephen said, if churches are really small, they may not have the resources to devote to a website. And you've sort of addressed that to some extent, that, it's really a matter of rethinking our priorities. It's the same thing that we've thought, as long as we have a couple of good hymns and a sermon in between, we're good to go with worship planning. Right. But indeed, just like the website is a public face of your church, one of the very first impressions, once you get people in the door, hopefully you have meaningful and memorable worship, because that's what's going to keep them coming back as well. So it's about where you prioritize and where you spend that budget. And I realize that many churches don't even have that much to spend on, so what would you say if you're a small church and you just barely have any approval to spend any money at all on a website? What would you do first, Dave?
Well, the first thing that I would say is it's important not to eat the seed corn. And when you eat the seed corn, then you can't grow. There's no crop for next year, and you need to think about your website as outreach, as a way to grow your church. And you're not going to get out of that small church problem unless you pursue excellence in these areas. Because of worship, I think is more important. But beyond worship, you really have to pursue excellence in some of these areas. And I think the website is one of the most cost-effective ways to pursue that excellence. Excellence in worship is probably going to cost you a fair amount for a good organist, that kind of thing. Yeah. And you need that to keep people. Right. You have to have that.
Right.
But beyond that, to get them there, you need to have investments in outreach. Yeah. And I think we used to spend money on yellow page ads or newspaper ads, but the last time I used my yellow pages was as kindling for fire.
Yeah. So some of the things you might, as incremental steps to getting to the place where you can get somebody like you to help them. Start simply by Facebook. And the more people that you have interacting on social media, the more that, that word gets out. And there's other outreach things like, how do you let people know? How many churches have I gone to? Even churches, big churches, who still have the signs out front from the 1950s, where, you're putting the letters in, and,
Hmm.
it like, just like an older website, it sort of advertises the fact that, well, we might still be in the 1950s here. So,
Right.
what is the
Yeah.
public face? And always keep just thinking incremental steps. How can we improve our public face? Just by step.
I do want to just say how big a heart I have for smaller churches. I think that
Absolutely.
they're the ones that most need this kind
Right.
of service,
Yeah.
because they often don't have the talent within their own church to
Right.
do it.
Right. So, another question:
Mhm.
how is the best way to drive traffic to your website? I think that came right before you actually told
Right.
us several steps. Anne asked, "Are you using Google Analytics?" Or the question, she said, could be expanded to: Is Google Analytics helpful?
Google Analytics can be extremely helpful, especially if there's a problem with your site. If you have Google Webmaster Tools, which you need in order to set up Google Analytics, it will tell you if your site has been hacked, because oftentimes you don't know. And if Google detects, because the goal of the hacker is usually not to take your site down, it's to spread malicious code. Now, one thing that I read actually in Slate not too long ago, the number one source of infected and hacked websites, churches. And it's because they're handled by volunteers and because they're not updated and people don't look at
Yeah.
them. And so you get these volunteer organizations with sites that have been compromised, and they just don't know. They don't know that it's happened. But as soon as that happens, Google figures it out, and what they do is immediately take you out of the search results, or they'll put a big warning flag above your search results saying, "Don't click on this site. Bad idea." They've got a virus.
Yeah.
And Google Webmaster Tools will help you with that. Google Analytics can also help you with that. I use a custom analytics suite called Keen.io that is a little bit more powerful in some ways, but it'll tell you things like how many people clicked on your bulletin download or how many people listened to which sermon, things
And
like that. A little bit.
how do you spell that, Dave?
Keen, Keen.io.
Okay, great.
That's Google Analytics is going to be better for a novice, though.
Right, right. So, Cynthia asks, with WordPress and SEO, what did you say to do?
With WordPress and SEO, yeah, there's a plugin that is called Yoast, Yoast, Yoast SEO, and that's just the name of the guy that developed it. But WordPress is by far the most common platform. All of our sites are based on WordPress, if you're familiar with that. It's the most popular website platform out there. Google loves it, but unfortunately, the default settings in WordPress are bad for SEO. There are more than one kind of SEO. There's a kind of that's called on-page SEO, which determines how good your website is, because obviously Google does care about that. And the other bit is off-page SEO. We do both, of course, but off-page SEO is the link building and basically what does the rest of the world think about your site. So you need to have the on-page done well, and just installing that plugin will help. It's important to do that if you're using WordPress, and a lot of people are for their church website. So I wanted to mention it because it's kind of a quick. It only takes 20 minutes. Anybody can do it, and it helps. So that's why I wanted to mention Yoast.
Great, great. So Beth asked a little bit more explanation when you said get more links on that slide.
Sure, and this is okay. The way that SEO works, like I said, there's on-page and off-page SEO. The way that off-page SEO works is Google is trying to give weight to who should be on top. Who should be, what's the most important result for this search term. Say, for instance, it's church. So in your area, because Google is smart enough to know you don't care about the national church. You don't want like the best national church. You want the best one in your area. What it's going to do is look at the total number of links. In other words, mentions about your church website on the entire web. And if, say, for instance, there's a website that has 10,000 links and there's one that has 2, which is Google going to think is the more relevant answer or the more popular answer or the answer that 98% of people are probably looking for. It's going to go with the one with more links. Now it's
That's
much
really helpful.
complicated than that. Yeah, it's much more complicated than that. But at its core, that's what it's talking about. Now, just as an example, the quality of the links also matter. Say, for instance, that your church has been linked to twice by the New York Times, and Google's comparing this to another site that has been linked to 200 times by some North Korean website that is not reliable at all. The site that is linked from a reputable source like the New York Times is going to rank much more highly.
Gotcha. Great. Okay, so design question. Should every page on the site use the same heading, or should each page be its own identity?
You should absolutely use the same heading and the same footer on every page if you can. You do want a consistent experience, and you want people not to get lost is the main thing. If they get frustrated with getting around with site navigation, that can cause them to leave the site. Typically, people will, if they get frustrated, I don't know about you, but it doesn't take much to frustrate me online. And as soon as I am, I exit out, or if I can't find what I'm looking for.
Right. So. I want to be able to, on every page, I want to be able to see that the main menu, so that I can get back to where I was, or find that. So yeah, that's right. How easy is it to navigate is a great question to ask yourself. So Sally asked, this is the last one that I have here. Where can I send someone to learn website design?
Learning website design it can be kind of tricky. Basically, Google is your friend. There are a lot of great tutorials for that, but the subject is very broad. It's very broad. It's almost like asking, where do I learn a language? Without realizing that there's multiple types of languages. So there's what style of website are you looking for? What platform? For instance, designing, the way that design works in WordPress is much different than the way that it would work in, say, ASP or .NET or something along those lines. But the heart of it is that you would typically start with a program that's actually a graphic design program like Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop. You'd create a design there, and then you would translate that design onto a website. Now, as far as actually coming up with design and learning that, there are a number of great tutorials online. I don't have any memorized, unfortunately, but just if you Google it, you will hopefully find some. And of course, just find something that you like and try to copy that is honestly what I would say.
Great. Well, friends, it's been a full over an hour, and thank you so much for hanging out. And thank you so much, Dave, for everything that you've brought. I hope that several of you will be able to take Dave up on his offer of helping you with your website and your ongoing support, if that's possible for you. This webinar will be recorded and sent to you. So if there's anything that you need to go back over, you'll have the recording. You can go back over that. Someone did ask a question about posting it somewhere else, and we'll absolutely get back to you on that. Yes, that'd be great. You can contact me at Marcia@marciamcphee.com. Jenna, if you would put my email there in the chat box, be glad to talk to you about posting it in other places. And also, those of you who are members of the Worship Design Studio, this will be in in the member website under the Media Arts, so that you can refer to it whenever you want to. It will be there with the over 200 other articles and videos and trainings for your folks that we have there in the Worship Design Studio. If you're not a member of Worship Design Studio yet and you'd like to be, we would love to have you come on board. You can go to worshipdesignstudio.com, learn more about Worship Design Studio. What else can we say, Dave?
And I do want to say that I really do wish each and every one of you the very best, and I really do hope that this was helpful. regardless.
Great.
So,
Great. Well, friends,
thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for being with us on this night, and we will see you in other educational webinars, and we'll see you in the Worship Design Studio. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.